chapter 4 of Becoming Sister Wives. This is Cody and Robin's, matrimony story. We're from the point of view of Cody. The first 3 parts are already up. Cody. Eventually, Madison, who was 14 at the time, noticed Robin sitting in the corner. "Dad, who is that?" she asked. For a long time, I had a running joke with my kids about taking a young wife. They had agreed that the youngest woman I might marry had to be 28 at least. "That's Robin," I said to Madison, "and she's 30. Madison picked up on my insinuation right away, and immediately she got a twinkle in her eye. Eventually, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and I sat down with Robin in Mary's living room. Robin was very forthcoming and direct. She laid out all she had been through, explaining about her ex-husband and their destructive relationship. She said that before things went any further, she didn't want there to be any secrets about her kept from the family. While Robin was laying it out on the line for us, Christine leaned over and she got right in her face. "So do you think her husband is cute or not?" Robin didn't know Christine well enough to understand she was joking. Robin explained that this sort of decision was left up to God and what he thought was right. Whether or not she thought I was cute was immaterial. She said that she was just there to figure out if this was something that God wanted for her. She was all business. Her answer took the wind right out of my sails. I'd been hoping she would confess to the same electricity I felt when I was with her. I was deflated. Finally, Robin explained that pursuing a married man isn't something she'd ever do. "Yeah, right, you hussy," Christine teased. Robin looked mortified. By the end of the evening, I was despondent. I was not just in with her, but in love, and I believe incorrectly that she had similar feelings for me. Now I realized that I'd have to court her affection. The next day, when I got home from work, I discovered that Mary had invited Robin over. Since my wives had given me permission to get to know Robin, which is the first step in approaching a new wife, I decided to say what was on my mind. "Robin," I said, "do you want to see if we can get to know each other better?" "Maybe, but I'm not asking anyone's permission," she said. This meant she wasn't going to approach her father or the church leaders. All the hard work had fallen on me. She was not going to make things easy. Now it's from the point of view of Robin. There are several ways for a woman to enter a plural marriage. One of these is to tell her father and her church leaders, after which they would approach the family. I felt uncomfortable with this. I was a divorced woman. People were already under the impression that I was hunting for a husband, which was completely untrue. Even though I had legitimate grounds for divorce from my first husband, a failed marriage still tarnished my reputation. So I was especially careful not to give the impression that I was desperate to remarry. I didn't want to chase anyone, especially because I had 3 children. To be so bold as to ask about a married man seemed very presumptuous. In our community, and I'm sure others, imagining that a man, especially one with many other children, wants to take responsibility for your kids is taking a lot for granted. Eventually, Mary convinced Cody to talk to the church leader. This was an important step in our faith for several reasons, one of which is so the church can make sure that a man has pure intentions and is not simply wife chasing. Cody was so uncharacteristically shy about approaching the leader. But when Christine and Mary accompanied him to the meeting, Cody was immediately given permission to talk to my father. When Cody called my father to ask permission to court me, my father was guarded. He knew how badly I'd been hurt before. "You can't court her, but you can get to know her," my father said. "No flowers, no chocolates, no love letters." Since I lived so far away from Cody, he and I talked on the phone regularly. Mary and I also kept in contact. Eventually, we started visiting on weekends. Whenever Cody visited me, he brought one of his wives or several of his children so that I could get to know the family better. Or he brought his children to watch her kids so they can go out on dates. That's not in the book. During the process, we were very chaste. We never hugged, we only held hands a couple of times, and that was in order to say a prayer. The only time we were alone during the getting to know each other process was to get chicken from the grocery store. They was brushing they fucking teeth together, okay? While I was... Oh, shit. Where am I? Okay. Soon I started to fall in love with him. I felt safe with Cody, and I felt comfortable with his family. Cody did and said everything perfectly. He proved himself to me so effortlessly. However, I was still waiting for a eureka moment when I'd know without a doubt that I was meant to be a part of Cody's family. I wanted fireworks and fanfare. I wanted angels singing in my ears. I wanted a sign from God. While I was standing... What is wrong with me? While I was waiting for this to happen, I wanted to deepen my relationship with Cody. So I told my dad, who called Cody and gave him permission to court me at last. From the point of view of Cody... For a couple of years before I met Robin, I'd been working as a sales representative selling advertising for billboards. Oh, not the sign shit again. While this job allowed me to work locally, it was a very tough way to make a living. There were times when I could barely sell at all. The day that Robin's father called and gave me permission to court Robin, my sales career had hit an all-time low. Things were so tough that I considered selling my car. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but I was still considering courting this amazing woman. I was certain that God would find a way for me to bring Robin into my life. After I got off the phone with Robin's dad, I told my wives that we'd received permission to court. Luckily, Robin was visiting Lehigh at the time, so we could immediately go on a date. My wives were all excited for me. Each of them had received the answer that Robin was meant to be in our family. In fact, Christine had received a more intense spiritual witness that Robin should marry me than she had received about her own marriage. Together we teased Robin mercilessly about the fact that we all knew her destiny. My wives and I were in what Robin called the knowing club, while Robin was still waiting for her answer. On our first date over lunch, Robin and I confessed everything about ourselves to each other. Stretch marks, smelly feet, bad habits. We wanted to get all the silly stuff out of the way. When we got back in the car, it had rained slightly and the sky was beautiful, with the sunlight pushing through the rain clouds. I looked over at Robin. "I love you," I said. I couldn't help myself. Saying those words was a relief and an absolutely cathartic experience. Leave me alone. I've had a rough day. From the point of view of Robin, I may have loved Cody, but I wasn't saying it until I was 100% sure. Words can be cheap, and I wanted to be careful. Now that we were courting, Cody and I started visiting with each other without the company of his wives. It was time to get to know each other better. I didn't want to be rushed into a marriage and family that was still unfamiliar. I know some people in our faith want a quick courtship and engagement, but I needed to build a better foundation. I didn't want to go to my wedding day and wedding bed with someone who was a relative stranger. In addition to God's testimony, I wanted a romantic love. Some of my sister wives were more interested in the sisterhood than in the husband, Christine. But perhaps since I'd been married before, I knew that I needed a man whom I loved, trusted, cherished, and adored. I also knew that asking for and receiving all of these things is hard. During a visit I made to see Cody, I began to pray and fast in order to receive a sign or an affirmation that I was meant to be in his family. I needed something concrete. I knew I was falling in love with him. I felt him breaking down all of my walls. I felt She-Ra putting away her sword. On one of our dates, we drove to Thanksgiving Point, a beautiful lookout where Cody had a billboard he was eager to sell. On this drive, I had a singular experience. I felt my heart start to swell. It seemed to be growing bigger in my chest. It even hurt. Is this how the Grinch saves Christmas? I'm so confused. I started to feel out of breath, but also at peace because I was with Cody and he was wonderful. Suddenly I felt as if the Heavenly Spirit was talking to me, and I knew. This was my affirmation. I knew without a doubt that this is whom I was meant to marry. I burst into tears. Cody looked at me, wondering what was wrong. Then he began to cry too. We were both so overcome. From the point of view of Cody, I'd been planning to ask Robin to marry me on her birthday, but I jumped the gun. A few days before her birthday, she told me that an older and esteemed man in our faith had called to inquire about courting her. This was a shock to my system. I was devastated. I didn't have the money to marry and support Robin, but I knew I would have to find a way. Even though Robin told the man she knew where she belonged, I was still shaken. The next day, Robin and I drove back out to Thanksgiving Point. As we sat there talking, I was overcome with what I believed was God's Spirit. Before I knew what I was doing, I took her hand and asked her to marry me. When Christine and I got engaged, she told me she wouldn't kiss me until we were at the altar. After we were married, she realized she had made a mistake and made me promise that if I married again, I'd kiss my next wife before we said our vows. So I took Robin's face in my hands and kissed her. Robin leaped out of the car and began to dance around. She was so happy and joyful. I got out of the car and she jumped into my arms. This happened on September 26th. We wouldn't get married for 6 months. Our lives were in upheaval. I couldn't support Robin yet. I couldn't even move her to our town. But I knew God would help me do what it would take to bring our families together when the time was right. And that is the end of chapter 4. So for my Goodreads people, we ended on chapter 80 or page 83 if you're updating your Goodreads.